Thank you so much, Cameron, and welcome everyone to our webinar today on building brand identity to mitigate misinformation and connect with audiences. We're really excited to be joined by some of our excellent colleagues that are going to, I'll introduce them in just a minute, but just so that take you through the agenda today, we'll start by introducing our speakers, talk a little bit about the objectives, we'll learn a little bit about why building a brand is important, what we mean when we say we're going to build a brand, and then we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how we do that. What does that look like? And for those of you who received the information in advance, you can think about that with respect to the worksheets you have or the mission statement, vision statement you might have. And we'll talk a little bit about what does it mean to implement a brand. So it's like, okay, now you've got something beautiful that you've thought through. It's going to connect with your audience. It's going to clearly describe what it is that you're doing. And then how do you kind of get it out into the world, and what does that mean? And so then, and we'll have an opportunity for Q&A with our speakers. And then we're going to have some time to practice. So if all of this is sounding like something that you don't know how to do at all, or it sounds really unfamiliar, do not fear. We are going to have some time to work together in small groups to kind of go through some of these steps. So today I'm excited to introduce to you Joseph Bovin, who's a communication specialist at Child Trends with over 20 years in media related fields and nearly 15 years directing and providing strategic communications guidance to federal, state, and local agencies, companies, political campaigns, and nonprofits. He's also a deputy project director for the OPRE Strategic Communications and Website Contract, and he serves as the communication lead for the National Research Center on Hispanic Children and Families and the PrEP Local Evaluation Support and Dissemination Project, or PLESD. I think they might pronounce it as a word, but Joseph will explain that later, among other roles. His areas of focus include brand management, community engagement, public relations, crisis communications, and digital and content marketing. We're really excited to have him here to describe a little bit about these different topics that I was mentioning, and then he'll also help us with the practice area. And then we're also joined by Stephanie McGinnis, who's a health communication analyst at RTI International. She specializes in strategic communication, digital strategy and product development, social media listening and recruitment, and qualitative research. She might be familiar to some of you. She helped manage the Exchange website a few years ago, and she also was very involved in some of the early work with the We Think Twice campaign, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. And then I'm Katie Selentrop, and I also was involved with We Think Twice, as well as other communications and branding campaigns. So today, we hope that when you leave this webinar, you will be able to describe the meaning of brand image, brand reputation, and brand identities to really kind of understand these concepts, and you can describe them to your subrecipients, to your colleagues. You'll have a deeper understanding of the importance of brand image and how it might impact public perception, and how we can think about that to help address misinformation. You'll know what is in the components of a brand identity, and that you'll be able to develop and implement a brand identity for your respective PrEP projects. I don't want you to think that when you leave here today, all of a sudden you have to be like a communications expert. There's definitely lots of other places where you can get that support, but all of you are experts in your PrEP project and in the programming you provide. So how can you bring that expertise up when you think about how you're communicating about the really important work that you're doing in communities across the country? And so just to get us started, get people thinking, we're going to do a poll. And the first poll is, do you have the information you need to be a brand ambassador for your project? And specifically, we're thinking about your PrEP project. So go ahead and answer the poll. Yes, I'm ready with an elevator speech. No, what is a brand? Or I can speak knowledgeably about our project, but I'm not comfortable calling myself a brand ambassador. And this is all anonymous. We can't see who's saying what, so feel free to participate. All right, so I think we can go ahead and close the poll, Cameron, and share the results with everyone. It looks like the vast majority of you, 70%, are really knowledgeable about your project, but you don't feel comfortable calling yourself a brand ambassador. So I don't know if this webinar will change your mind, but maybe it will. So I'm going to go ahead and with that, turn it over to Joseph.
So, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And it's really great to be here. So we're just going to go ahead and start really with what's the relevance of brand and just kind of provide an overview. So, whether you've created one or not, your prep project already has a brand, or more specifically, your project is a brand and has a brand image, which is loosely defined as how the public or your audience presently perceives your project. So obviously the public perception of your brand can change over time and may even vary within different audiences and contexts. However, if you haven't taken the steps to take control of that public perception, then it will always be at the whim of external forces. So this can lead to misunderstandings concerning the nature, purpose, and intent of your project. Put simply, if you don't build your brand's identity, then the public will do it for you. So as you all are aware, the personal responsibility education program has not always been seen favorably by all members of the community it serves. So often this is because of misinformation and occasionally due to disinformation. At our last webinar, we discussed how people rarely are able to take the time to learn about a product or think critically about topics outside the scope of their daily work. This is largely because of the numerous other issues that fill their day and take up their cognitive capacity. So in order to address everything coming at us and avoid cognitive overload, we use things like heuristics or shortcuts that use assumptions and past experiences to make decisions. This means that more often than not, people use information from what they perceive as a trusted source to make the decisions. This can be anything from a social media post, a rumor, or simply an emotional response shaped by a myriad of sources and personal biases. So marketers and others tend to exploit this by creating positive associations with brands through things like humorous commercials, cartoon mascots, and short emotional-based statements for political ads. So it's likely that you have heard of the brands represented by their logos on the page we're showing here. So look at each of them and then think about the feeling they invoke in you, the memories you may have with them, and what each consistently provides to you. Whether those emotions or memories are good, what you experience is the power of brand to evoke emotion and limit critical analysis. The power of brand can protect organizations from the public's ire over missteps, legitimize the messages and products they promote, and drive purchases of products or services at premium prices over less expensive competitors with similar, better products. Of course, the same power can leave an organization unused, mistrusted, demonized, and bankrupt. So on the next slide, while there are numerous examples of this occurring in the media to prep projects, we thought we should show an example of where branding could have been used more effectively that maybe hits a little less close to home. So according to reporting, when a new overdose prevention center was introduced in East Harlem, residents were angered at what they saw as just another drug treatment center added to the plethora of methadone clinics already existing in the area. So residents saw their neighborhood as a space where services for the entire city were being pushed because residents tended to be less affluent. And the communications they received were not about supporting their communities, but about the value of this center to New York City and the nation as a whole. And it didn't help that On Point was being seen as an experimental model and lauded as one of the first of its kind in the US. So as the experiment continued, residents began attributing many of the challenges in their neighborhood to that program. So this is where branding can come in. A company's brand, or more specifically brand identity, again, the idealized brand image, identifies and clarifies its purpose by establishing what it does, what it doesn't do, and presents an image and actions that reflect this so that there is less opportunity for the public to get the wrong impression of its purpose and mission. It ultimately addresses misinformation and public perceptions by informing individuals what a company or product stands for, simply and upfront, by removing ambiguity. It maintains this across platforms and over time, creating a consistent message that ambassadors like yourselves can point to when describing it. It works to establish favorable associations and trust through regular fulfillment of a brand promise that causes audience to be more critical of negative misinformation concerning it, and it can be used to inform messaging, crisis communications, and outreach so that you can shift the public's perception of a program and maintain it. So taken all together, this is called brand equity. It's defined by the Oxford Dictionary as the commercial value that derives from consumer perception of the brand name of a particular product or service, rather than the product or service itself. Okay, so with all of that said, what could one OnPoint New York City and the city have done to brand the OnPoint Center? Without going into the community engagement and some other communications issues, OnPoint New York City and the city could have chosen East Harlem residents as one of its audiences and considered communicating how the Overdose Prevention Center would address the specific challenges that exist in the neighborhood as part of its brand image. It could have emphasized that its services would support not only the clients, but the entire community by reducing public consumption, needle waste, and deaths within the area it served. It could have comforted residents by downplaying the center as one of two first of their kind centers in the nation, and emphasized that it's using a model that has shown success in numerous countries across the world. It could have emphasized using a model that has shown success in numerous countries, and it could have emphasized its work in normal drug addiction and reduce stigma so that meaningful treatment can begin not for a generalized category like marginalized people, but for the people in the area it was placed. Finally, OnPoint could have developed a specific logo and webpage imagery for an East Harlem site that discussed the center's engagement and shared stories about its success, not simply in terms of data, but in terms of real stories about people and the community experiencing positive change. For example, it could have shared a study done on the first 2 months of its opening that showed no fatal overdoses occurred in these types of centers or among individuals transported to hospitals. So would a branding have solved all of the problems for the center? No, but it would have helped. So the next slide. So now we have another poll. So we really want to know at this point, what have your experiences been? What kind of challenges have you faced? So yeah, if you would like to take that, would be great. Looks like, has anybody experienced any of this? The use of different me. Okay, so we have the use of inaccurate information is happening, the use of inaccurate facts, the use of disinformation to hamper public opinion, and a community or parent rejection. So it looks like the biggest problem we're really facing here is the use of inaccurate facts and the community or parent rejection based on preconceived notions about the project, not supported by facts. That's okay. Well, to be honest, it looks like we're experiencing a lot of challenges across the board, but certainly with the parent rejection being at the top. So first of all, I'm sorry to hear that some of you are experiencing these challenges, but hopefully some of what we talked about today will resonate with you and help you to address some of these challenges. So let's go on to the next slide, brand definitions. So before we go too much further, we'd like to discuss some definitions. While we don't want you to get bogged down by these terms, which are largely jargon and may be used differently by varying marketers, we do want to make certain that we all are working off of some of the common definitions that are going to be important in structuring how you think about using your brand to mitigate misinformation. We'll touch on just a few definitions for this webinar in the next section. With that said, we'd like to take a measure of the room's knowledge by first doing another quick poll. So just take a moment to select the term that best represents the meaning in the word brand. We have essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different definitions here. Great. Okay. So in reading all of these, as you likely guessed, all of these are definitions for a brand, except for, I don't know. We just wanted to make it clear that if you aren't quite clear on what brand is, it's likely because there is a lot of discussion about it, and there isn't a consensus really on what it means. But in the next slide, you'll find that, so basically, with that consensus not really known, we do want to go ahead and define how we're going to be using the term brand. In our case, we're going to say that brand can be defined as a set of tangible and intangible attributes designed to create awareness and identity and to build the reputation of a product, service, person, place, or organization. Ultimately, your brand is a product, organization, or service that's reputation is only as good as the promise it keeps and the actions it takes. Next is brand image. So as we've already discussed, brand image can be defined as how your project is perceived in the present based on a host of conscious and unconscious beliefs and biases. It is the current representation of your project based on everything an individual knows, assumes, or feels about your project. The brand management guide defines it this way. Brand image is the current view of the customer about a brand. It can be defined as a unique bundle of associations within the mind of the target customer, and it signifies what the brand presently stands for. It is a set of beliefs held about a specific brand. Again, put simply, brand image is the concept of a brand that is held by the consumer. So brand identity. Now, if you've ever heard the phrase, don't wear the clothes for the job you have, wear the clothes for the job you want, you know just about all there is to know about brand identity. Brand identity is aspirational. It is the image that you present to your target audience that you want them to take to heart and from which you will build your reputation and solidify a new image. Researchers have said it is the collection of all visual and verbal brand elements that portray a desired image and tell a meaningful consumer story. It is important to note that a brand identity refers to the strategic goal for a brand, while brand image is what currently resides in the minds of the consumers. So now that we understand some of the terms associated with brand, as well as brand identity, how will we use them? Well, since we aren't Coca-Cola or Tony Tiger, the goal is to use branding to shift public opinion from the current brand image to the aspirational brand identity by creating the components of a brand identity that then growing brand awareness and reputation through the communication and implementation of that brand identity until it becomes your brand image. Now, does this make sense? That's a lot of new terms all kind of tossed together. My guess is probably not. So in short, we are going to discuss how to develop a brand identity from the components that make it up and the ways that you share it with your clients and the public to make it into the current image or perception of your prep project. All right, so the components of brand. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper here into what a brand identity is and the components that make it up. Branding is really all about bringing your brand identity, the aspirational image of your project, to life through the solidification of values and the development of a variety of brand components that act as mechanisms to transfer feelings, emotions, and beliefs to your audience. This helps your brand appeal to your target audience. Think of it as describing how the project looks, acts, and functions. If you've ever played a video game, your brand identity is like your avatar or your sim or character, and the components are the aspects you add to differentiate it from the other players in the game. Brand identity components, differ depending on who you talk to, but generally they comprise of the following. The organizational brand statement. So this serves at the heart of your identity as a definition from the Dummies Guide on Branding. Again, a wonderful brand in itself. It mentions that the brand statement shrinks all your thoughts about your business mission, values, promise, and character into a concise statement that defines what you do, how you differ from all similar solutions, and what you pledge to consistently deliver. Next is your brand voice. So this is a distinct tone and personality that your project will use when communicating with your audiences and that they will become familiar with. This tone should be set by the wording in your brand statement. So next, messaging. This is the way you will describe what you do and how you do it to your audiences. As we will describe later, your messaging should be directly related to your organizational mission, brand pillars, brand statement, and voice. Talking points. So next, your talking points. Talking points ultimately evolve from your messaging. These statements are developed to resonate with audiences and provide a basis for your external communications, providing staff, leadership, and anyone who is a brand ambassador a common way to speak as the project. With the character and voice developed, you can then build the project's look and feel by developing organizational graphic design, color schemes, and typography. These pieces are often what people think of when discussing brand and are critical to your ability to transmit your identity and reputation and connect emotionally with your audiences to build recognition and familiarity. And finally, the logo. A logo personifies your brand statement and conveys your identity even when standing alone. The best logos ultimately are going to embody their brand. And I guess really finally, actions. Actions are how you act as an organization. So actions simply refer to the old adage that actions speak louder than words. Make sure that whatever action you take, they are consistent with your mission and your brand statement. Okay. And I'll go ahead and I'll step back for a second and let Stephanie provide a quick example of what we're talking about here.
Thanks, Joseph. So this is an example you may be familiar with. These are different brand identity elements from the We Think Twice campaign. So you can see here on the screen on the left side, these are approved brand colors. There's also in the middle information on how to use the brand logo. On the right, you can see the logo don'ts, which also make sure that staff use logos appropriately across all communication materials. So we really just wanted to kind of put these examples in early on so you had a visual and some context of all of those elements that Joseph was just mentioning. And then we also have a few additional examples from the We Think Twice campaign here, talking about fonts and image guidance. So these are really important aspects of the brand identity. The font guidance is pretty straightforward of which fonts to use where and when, but you can also see there is some photo direction guidance as well. And this is really to make sure that pictures align with the We Think Twice brand. So you can see here it mentions that photos should be diverse. They can include a wide range of expressions. And also there's an important focus on showing youth achievements through imagery, so such as graduating high school. You can also see the last sentence here talks about that the photos can be in color or they can be in black and white. So again, these are just some quick examples of ways to make sure that the brand identity is consistent and some of those elements that Joseph was just talking through. So we wanted to therefore move into another poll to talk about developing a brand identity and its components, which requires a number of organizational communication products that communicate the goals, audience, and mission of the organization. So really, we want to know which of those pieces you have developed for your project thus far. Looks like some answers are coming in, and we have project objectives or goals, and also the mission and vision statements, which is great. Awesome. A lot of people have the project objectives and goals. All right, awesome. I think I will hand it back to you, Joseph.
Yeah, great, thank you. So yeah, thanks for answering those polls. For those of you who have not developed a mission or vision statement, which looked like a good portion of you, I just recommend that you use the project's purpose statement. Again, a lot of those objectives or goals those will really serve you well as we kind of move forward in this as well. So, for those folks who don't have any of those, I also just recommend that, you use the knowledge you have of your project and the audiences and the directions you just want to go to kind of to build those goals. So what's the process for developing a brand identity and the components that make it up? First, we are going to establish the goals you're trying to achieve through branding. And then next, we're going to establish the foundational elements of your project and its mission by creating what are known as brand pillars. It's from these that we can craft the components that make up a project's brand identity, the first of which will be the project's brand statement. Okay, and then in step 3, we'll begin crafting that brand statement from your pillars and the programmatic mission and vision statement. And then finally, in step 4, we'll discuss how you can use the brand statement and brand pillars to build the remaining components of your brand identity, including personality, voice, messaging, and that visual brand. So step 1, branding goals. As I mentioned, the first step in branding is to establish your goals for doing so. So what are you trying to achieve through the process of branding? Typically, organizations help to build feelings and associations, create an identity that aligns with its audience, and build a positive reputation. However, there are numerous other reasons that you may have for developing a brand identity. You may already know what these are when you start the branding process, or you can take time to conduct a strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats analysis, environmental scan, or a competition scan to determine other goals for the development of your brand identity. For example, you may also want to connect with clients or improve your image, separate your identity from others, align your brand identity with messaging to the context you are in or for those you serve. Or you may also want to address potential threats by putting increased emphasis on some programmatic areas or messaging. The list basically just goes on, but it's really just dependent on your needs. So once determining your goals, use these in determining the way you choose the language, designs, or the communications channels that you're going to be using inside of your branding. So if you're interested in connecting more with the public, consider choosing language for your brand statement that is less technical. If you're trying to establish yourself as a brand for learning, consider using a color scheme that people associate with it. And if you want to build a positive reputation, then relay a promise to your audience that relates to how they want you to serve them and fulfill this time and time again. So our brand pillars. So step 2, now that we have our goals, we want to identify the core concepts important to a project's aspirational brand identity. We'll use these to build a project brand identity components that act as vehicles to communicate these core concepts to the public. Brand pillars are a common way to think about, gather, and organize these core concepts, and the one that provides a categorical structure for all of the project's branding and messaging needs in the future. So while many marketers will create brand pillars for strategic planning and other pillar groups for other areas of marketing communications, we've decided to keep it simple and stick to the brand pillars for the purposes of this webinar. So like the development of brand identity, the names of the brand pillars vary widely in literature. The most popular model is one called the 5 Ps. So, and honestly, authors even disagree on these. But for our purposes, the 5 Ps are going to be the purpose, or why your organization exists, position, or what your clients receive from you that they don't from a similar service or potentially no service, personality, the personality by which you present your project, and perception, how your audience and clients perceive the project and ultimately how you want them to perceive the project. And then finally, the promotion, or how you ideally want the project to be experienced and provided, and how you want to provide outreach for it. So the brand, so here are some examples. This is a chart that we created to share how you can craft your own 5 Ps. We've grouped them into categories. Audience, purpose, and position are, largely dictated by what you want the project to be. whereas personality, perception, and promotion are largely how others perceive the project or how you would like to perceive it. And then finally, client outcome is the result or impact that you want to have on a person who completes your project, or your project. So you'll note that we added 2 pillars. These are audience and client outcome. We did this for 2 reasons. 1, because we felt like these 2 categories are important enough to be highlighted. And 2, we wanted to illustrate that you can have as many pillars as you would like, and you can shape or name them to address your specific branding goals. No matter what you name your pillars, make sure that the pillars you choose to represent your brand identity are those that will explain your purpose, the positioning, audience, and your personality. So to create the contents of each of these pillars, you'll want to consult with your mission and vision statement, as well as your project goals and organizational project strategic plan, if one exists. So from those documents, you can choose or conceive of words or simple phrases to each of the pillars. So let's walk through the table to see how you can develop these pillars on your own. For the audience pillar, you can answer the questions, whom does your project serve, and who else do you need to reach to ensure that those you wish to serve are able to access your project? So when thinking through your audience, try not to generalize. Instead, think through who your clients are and what their circumstances are. It may even be helpful to develop customer personas. So these are brief profiles of potential clients. For example, a customer persona may look like this: a young woman, 15 years old, just becoming interested in boys. She lives in a rural community, is from a middle-class family, has average grades, and a strong religious faith. All these pieces of information may aid you in developing the brand identity and its components that will help you connect to your clients and community. So a few examples of some of the terms that we came up with for this particular pillar, are at-risk youth, at-risk youth in an urban setting, lower income earning parents, school boards, decision makers, or in the case of some state grantees, the organizations you are depending on to do the work, or the sub-grantees. Purpose. The next pillar is purpose. So to determine purpose, answer the question, why do you exist as a project? This should largely be taken from your mission statement, vision, or potentially programmatic goals in the absence of other documents. But a few examples of the words we decided to use are, build personal responsibility, reduce unwanted pregnancy, and empower youth to delay sexual activity. Position, this pillar answers the question, what do your clients or communities receive from you that they don't get from a similar service, or potentially in the absence of a service? So when answer this, think about what is it that your client needs or wants. A few examples of things that might represent your unique position in the market are evidence-based education, proven model, scientifically proven, evidence-based behavior change, or a means to prevent life-altering events. We've also provided some other information here that will be included in the slides that we send around. So next piece here is the brand pillars. For the personality, answer the questions, how do you want your project to be perceived? What is its attitude? So when you're doing this, think about who your audience is and what your objective is in communicating it with them. So you may want to have like a down-to-earth or family-oriented personality, or one which is technical and sticks to the facts, or one which is useful and caring and open. It's very it's very dependent on who your audience is and the way that you want to communicate the information. Perception. So the perception, so in terms of perception, the question here is, how do you want your audience to think of the project in comparison to how they view it now. So again, think about what you want your project to be perceived as, not what its image is now. Do you want them to see you as a trusted source, a good neighbor, a critical part of the education system, part of their community, or as an authority figure? Think about your clients in the community. What do they need you to be to use and access your services? And finally, or next is the promotion pillar. So the promotion pillar, in this case, we're answering the question, how do you ideally want the project to be accessed and experienced? In this case, you are really looking at people's perception of you. This means you want to create the persona that causes your client to seek you out. That builds a network of word of mouth traffic, because your client's experience is one they want to share. So ultimately, it should represent the goals that you have for the way you conduct your outreach and its results. So a few words we came up with are meet clients where they are, accessible to all, and family-based outreach. California's PrEP explains that its project services are engaging, non-judgmental, medically accurate, and tailored to the unique needs of youth participants and their communities. This phrase really indicates that it's a tailored but ultimately open experience. Now, finally, we reach the client outcome pillar. So here, we're just asking, how do you want the client to feel when they complete your service? So when answering this, think about the fact that ultimately you are providing a service that will transform someone's life in the future. You aren't selling yourself. You are selling to the client and your audience an outcome that is experiential and personal. So we chose words like confident, prepared, educated, empowered, future ready, and in control. So here's a quick example. Once completed, your brand pillars could look something like this. You can see that anyone on your team can now look at this chart and identify whom they can target, the purpose of the project, what makes it unique, the personality they should use when representing the organization, the goal for how the project is to be perceived and promoted, and the outcome the project expects people to have when they leave. So now we'll use these to start building our brand components. So the brand statement. So this is step 3. So the first of your PrEP brand identity components is the brand statement. As we've mentioned, your brand statement is important as it clarifies the purpose and intent of your project and provides a promise to the audience about what your project will do consistently. So going back to our video game analogy, imagine this is a description of your character. As a result, it is only slightly less important than your project's mission and vision statement, and will provide one of the cornerstones for the development of all other components of your brand identity. So how do we create it? To develop a brand statement, first review your PrEP project's vision, mission, value statement, and objectives, as well as your newly created branding pillars. Use these to recall programmatically the goals of the project, who it serves, and its mission. Then think about the goals of your branding and how these help to further target the way you want to be perceived by your audience. Keep this concept of your brand identity in mind. So after refreshing your memory concerning your intended brand identity and goals, we'll home in on our project's brand pillars to define the structure and content of your brand statement. So use your brand pillars to create a statement that describes whom the project serves using your audience pillar, what the project does, and the promise it keeps to its audience using the purpose pillar, how the project differs from other solutions using the position pillar, and create the personality and tone through which you convey all of this through your personality pillar. Whoops. Sorry about that, but through your personality pillar. Finally, incorporate details and information from other pillars as they are needed to reach your branding goals and the needs of your specific audience. So the pillar and the corresponding words and phrases you choose should ultimately evoke emotions that you feel best represent your project. So for example, if you feel your project goes out of its way to provide transparency and openness, make certain to express this. Or if you want to connect more fully to your clients, you may want to focus on the client outcomes. Okay, so now it's time to write your brand statement with the words you've chosen. With all the information written down and a firm concept in your head about what your project does, why it does it, and for whom, use these words and ideas to write a 1 or 2 sentence statement that defines your project and provides a promise to your audience. This can be as short as a few words or as long as a couple sentences. Just please keep in mind that it's typically better to keep them short and concise so that audiences don't get lost in your words. Okay, so here's a few examples of what a brand statement can look like and where they likely use the brand pillar. So here's Greenpeace. Greenpeace is an independent campaigning organization which uses nonviolent creative confrontation. This is, their position here, their position of nonviolent creative confrontation. So this is probably this is what a brand pillar that's making them unique, right? And then to explode, the next section is to expose global environmental problems and to force the solutions. So this is their purpose, or ultimately what they do, which are essential to a green and peaceful future. So this is, this really implies an audience of people who care about the future. And it gives you an idea about, again, what they're actually doing. And then this next one we have is just from Google, and it's to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Google's conflating some things here, but the audience served and its position are, really in that making it universal, basically making everything, making it universal brings out the idea that this is really for something for everybody. It's also really unique in that the position is that they're able to do this universally. It's not for just as it's not just for one country or one place, it's for everybody. And then ultimately, what is their position here? They're going to make their position statement, they're going to take that information and they're going to make it useful. So that's essentially what they're saying. The thing that they can do is that other people can go ahead and they can create other people can gather the similar information, but what Google can do is then make that information useful to you. Okay, so the brand statement, thank you. So you can see here a rough example of how we use the brand pillars to develop a brand statement from a template. We essentially created a fill in the blank sentence with the pillars that we wanted to use to create our brand statement. So we used position, audience, purpose, and client outcome. Our brand position, or what makes us unique in this case, is to provide evidence-based behavioral change models. The audience we served in this case is at-risk youth in urban communities. Our purpose is to empower youth to delay sexual activity. And we've decided to add in that client outcome to drive home the impact to those we are trying to reach. So you'll also see that we will use down to earth. So in developing it, you'll also see that we use really a down to earth but empowering personality in our final sentence. So what did we come up with? We came up with, we provide evidence-based behavioral models that empower youth in urban communities to delay sexual activity by giving them tools to take control of their bodies and futures. So in this, we aren't promising the world, but we are promising that youth will have the tools they need to be responsible for their sexual futures. So now that we've written the statement, we just want to make sure that we go back and ensure that it addresses the project's primary audience, the context in which they and the project operate, the way the project empowers your clients and potentially community, what the prep project is, again, so that it's clear what it's not. It provides the personality and the character relayed in the project's brand pillars. And it has adherence to the project's mission, vision, objectives, and values. So just want to make sure we go back and we look to make sure that it encompasses all those elements. So once we've done that, we make the necessary changes. And then you can go back and make those to it. And then once you're done with that and have it reviewed by a number of folks, you'll probably pretty much have a great brand statement that you can use and be proud of. With that said, you can go ahead and, if you have the funds available, it's a really good idea to go ahead and take this and test it across the various different focus groups, and definitely those audiences that you are serving, some of those audiences that you're trying to reach. So then what is the purpose of this? How are you going to use this brand statement? Well, it's going to serve as a central component of communications and messaging. It's going to be used in external communications in messaging, and it's going to be the central element in the development of your brand identity components, which is what we're about to talk about now. So, creating the brand identity. Finally, here we are, we've reached step 4, building the rest of the components of brand identity. While we don't have the time in this webinar to describe everything that goes into each of the components, we do want to touch on how the brand statement can be used as your guide and the brand pillars that should be used for 3 types of brand identity components, including the verbal and written brand, the visual brand, and the brand actions. So first, a brand statement. Again, after all the work we went through to create brand pillars, why even review the brand statement? Why not just use the pillars exclusively to develop our brand identity? For one simple reason, really. Your brand statement is a synthesis of the things that you found most important to present and project to your audiences. As a result, you're going to want to continue to use it to guide how you shape your branding by returning to it over and over again to the audience's concepts, words, personality, and brand pillars you use to create it. So in addition, use it along with your mission and vision statement to ensure that your brand components stay in alignment, ultimately offering a consistent image of the project. So now, beyond just the brand statement, then, how do you use what we've built so far with the brand pillars to create our components? So again, this isn't comprehensive, but a few tips here's just a few tips that kind of include the following. So for the verbal components, things like your organizational voice, messaging, and talking points, you'll want to design these to clarify who you are and what you do, as well as shape them to address miscommunications and false perceptions. So this starts by aligning the project's audience and their context with the language and issues you address. So thinking back to the examples of the Overdose Prevention Center, what are the issues that the community cared about, and what is the language that could have been used to assuage fears or driven acceptance and support? Continue to think about this, and then include in your verbal and written works whenever possible what your prep project does and what it makes it unique or gives it value to your audiences, i.e., this is your purpose and your position pillars. So, of course, as you craft your verbal and written communications, remember to use your personality pillar exemplified in your brand statement throughout all facets of your project's written and verbal presentations. Finally, it's important that we look at the perception that people currently have of the project, as well as what you want your project's image to ultimately be, and craft a message that addresses both perspectives. Again, here is where aligning your audience and message are critical. Ensure that your message weaves your future goals into those of the audience you serve and for whose support you need. Now, when it comes to the project images, design, and logo, collectively called its visual statement or identity, these should be developed in alignment with the audience your prep project serves and their context, and should use concepts related to its purpose, position, promotion, and desired perception, as well as personality, in much the same way as your messaging. You can review your brand statement to see the emphasis that you place on each of the components of your identity and find the right feel for your imagery within the personality of your brand. Now, finally, as for the actions you take, identify these to the brand statement's promise and the desired brand perception found in your brand pillars. You can also look to the promotion pillar to define the organization's you can look at the promotion pillar to define how you ultimately want folks to engage with you down the road and to undertake and use your services. So you'll create those types of descriptions there. So and then ultimately, as I mentioned, we don't have the time to go into each of the component types, unfortunately, but we do want to provide a couple examples of what creating a component might look like. So let's take a logo for the first example. One way to approach developing a PrEP logo is to first consider the purpose of PrEP specifically for your PrEP program. As stated on the PrEP website, its purpose is to educate adolescents and young adults on both abstinence and contraception for the prevention of pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. This includes HIV and AIDS. That's the universal definition, but how does it differ for your unique context and the approach you are taking as it relates to your audience or methods? With your purpose in mind, consider whether aligning the logo with its federal roots is best for your audience and brand. So each organization should consider how its audience will respond to associations with the federal government. For some communities, it may be important to connect your logo design clearly to similar federal logos. However, in other communities, building your logo and identity to more closely reflect your organization or community may better facilitate community engagement and understanding. As a reminder, you'll need to provide recognition of funding as appropriate and required. So having made the decision as to whether I'll align yourself with the federal iconography or not, review each of your brand pillars and brand statement. Pull the words and feelings that are most important to you. For example, using the national PrEP purpose, these might be to educate an audience of adolescents and young adolescents on ways to prevent pregnancy. And then use the pillars and concepts in the statement to conceive of the images, then your colors, your shapes, and a design that represent your PrEP project. And finally, you can go ahead and you can draft up your concepts and then craft that logo. And then once you've crafted that logo, go ahead and test it again. Select a group of clients or constituents across the multiple demographics that ultimately you're serving, and find the one that works for them. Find that space, that image that really means something to them, and that's the one you're going to want to go with. So that may all have been a little vague. So we just want to provide a few real life examples. So the first one here is the purpose of PLES. So the first one here is PLES. The purpose of PLES project, which was found in the scope of its work, is to build and expand the adolescent pregnancy prevention knowledge base by supporting grantees to conduct rigorous program evaluations to improve programming and ultimately youth outcomes. More specifically, it includes a range of activities that build upon one another to strengthen and support local evaluations and recipients and subrecipients of PrEP grants. This includes innovative communication products to disseminate effective and promising practices that PrEP grantees identified. So there's the statement. So in crafting the PLES logo, we read through that statement as there was not any kind of a brand statement to work off of, and then we created our own. We created our own brand statement. We then reviewed the PrEP projects and especially the logo associated with the federal projects to garner potential ideas. Next, we chose words associated with the project's purpose statement, as well as objectives and its audience position and client outcome. We then used the keywords of learning, youth, young adults, community, protection, improvement, building, guidance, federal, communication, and growth. We developed some initial sketches and provided these to a designer with instructions with a request to include movement and sense of community learning, so it was intertwined in the images, and then asked them to provide some mock-ups and interpretations of the initial concepts. So you can see in our prep logo, which is used, or you can see it within inside of the prep logo on this slide. That's ultimately kind of used across a lot of federal programs. We represented this pretty heavily inside of the PLES logo. So in our case, we wanted to emphasize our connection to prep projects across the state and nations, but also wanted to show a connectedness and the forward growth of a playful but intentional cooperative learning community associated with differing types of prep. Ultimately, we then went ahead and presented these to a committee. The committee chose a few designs they liked. We went ahead and had those come back, had another designer review those and make some additional changes. And then you can ultimately see in this final design, we ended up with a protective shield that is also open, again, around a community of learners with those arms, those arms kind of pointed upward, indicating an upward motion towards success, while the playful colors, ultimately represented both our diversity and focus on the betterment of young people's futures and those of the prep program. And then I'll hand this off for.
We also have the We Think Twice example provided on this slide, which I think is a nice juxtaposition to the PLES logo, and that the target for this We Think Twice campaign was really youth. So this started back in March of 2018 when we met with young people across 5 different states in the US, really to discuss, how they use social media and other kind of elements of their life. And after the team took what we learned from the teens specifically and developed different campaign concepts that spoke to some of those overarching themes. We then took it really back to the audience, back to youth, and we wanted to make and got their feedback. We really wanted to make sure that we used color and that the campaign name was something that resonated with teens, which was ultimately why we wanted to engage youth at all steps. So in August of 2018, teens actually chose the campaign name and concept out of multiple different options. As you can see, we kept the logo pretty streamlined due to the use of a lot of color, but we also wanted to make sure that the font and the logo wasn't too busy because of where this logo would be used. Ultimately, this logo would be used in social media and on digital products. So that really informed our decision to make it a bit more streamlined and not as busy as some other logos. We then talked with teens not only, as I said, to determine the name and the logo, but also the messaging as well, which is what we will talk about next. So for messaging, messaging is really derived from your mission, vision, brand statement, and also value proposition. So you can further use your brand pillars to ensure that your framing for the specific messaging you're developing is really on point. So first, you really want to determine what the goal is of your message. So what are you trying to communicate? Does your goal align with your project's mission, vision, and brand statement? And if not, you may want to rework your goal a bit more. However, if it really does align, develop the messaging by pulling heavily from your brand and mission statement language, and use your brand pillars to ensure that you're shaping it with the personality, voice, and ultimately the organizational promise. And then finally, where possible, provide a proof statement that indicates how and why you can deliver on this promise. So really, it's important to use messaging consistently across your channels. This is another example we pulled of brand messaging in action. You can see at the top of this slide a list of message guidance, which was ultimately developed. That is to make sure that messaging is empowering, approachable, engaging, and positive. This is an example social media post where you can see how this was implemented. And then on the right side of the screen, these are some screenshots from the website and how this messaging is also implemented and used on the website to ensure consistent brand identity, which is serving really the youth audience.
Great. So, as you complete the development of your brand components, it's important that you also enshrine your efforts so that others in your project can reproduce what you've created across products. This will create consistency in your brand that ultimately support your efforts to create familiarity and trust with your audience and maintain clarity about what your organization does and does not do. To do this, you'll want to develop, a brand book, also known as a brand Bible, which is a guide that houses everything from your brand statement to design parameters. And I think it's on the next pair. I think it's like we're actually on the next. Yeah, thanks. So, everything from your brand statement to design parameters, messaging, and even a style guide. So, after doing so, you can build out plans and timelines to complete your work and roll out your new brand. In doing so, you may want to split the plans into 3 parts: an internal plan for ensuring that all of your communication materials in the company materials are branded with your new identity, and the communications materials for your launch have all been developed. A plan to gather input and roll out the brand identity to employees so they feel brand ownership and are aware of, have access to, and know when to use brand materials. And then finally, an external communications plan that includes when to launch your brand, as well as external communications about it to your close partners, clients, media, and public. So once this is all in place, the final stage is implementation of the plans and brand across the organization. So during this period, ensure that everything from messaging and your project director's comments to the pamphlets you hand out to youth and press releases are aligned with your new brand when you're ready for its release. For those of you who want to know more, we'll send more information around inside of our slides. So what does external implementation and communicating your brand look like? So after launching your new brand identity, remain consistent in its use. So while there are no magic tricks that will stop misinformation from affecting your project outreach and the project's use, there are a few tips that can lead to improved identification and opinion of your project, so that misinformation has less room to gain traction and is more likely discounted. First, continue to build your brand identity and recognition with your audience by remaining consistent in voice, tone, message, and visual identity. Over time, this will bring about familiarity and feelings of comfort with your project and clarify your work to the public. Next, build trust. You can do this by not breaking your promise. Make sure that, make sure that whatever promise you place and you're telling folks, make certain that you're just continually making good on that promise. And as you do that, you're going to go ahead and you're going to build that trust with them. You're going to build understanding. You're ultimately going to build a space where they don't feel that there's they're going to feel that you're an organization that does what you say. The next thing here is just building brand awareness and reputation. So share success stories that support your brand identity. This should be not only stats and data, but personal stories from those who went through the prep project. And then finally, manage brand reputation. Address misrepresentations of the project's work through clear, concise referrals to what the organization does and its brand statement and mission. And so there we are. We are now in the question and answer section. And I don't know if we feel like we have time to do this or if we should move along, go into the workshop at this point.
Why don't we take, 1 to 2 questions if people have them. You can put them in the chat or you can take yourself off mute and then we'll move into the workshop.
Great.
Any questions that folks had? There was a lot of content that we ran through.
Okay.
I have a quick question. I'm thinking about, and maybe this is a larger discussion too, is we have our prep programming, but we also have other programs within our organization that we work really closely with. So any tips on working together to have a cohesive brand? So like we're in adolescent and school health programs, we have school health, but then we also have the prep program. So how to coordinate amongst many brands?
Yeah, sure. So one of the best ways to do that really is to use, it's really connected to like your visual brand. So to the degree that you can, look at the color scheme that you're using, and then bridge that color scheme across all of the different products that you're putting out, or it's often I call collateral. So, make sure that that's in place. And then you can use, if it's all connected to an organizational, the same organization, as I'm guessing it is in this case. And you can always fall back on your organizational mission statements and your organizational vision, and incorporate those into both of those types of brands. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That was super helpful.
I will just caution that you make sure that that you want those two different brands to be related to each other, because once you start doing that, they can affect each other, and people's perceptions will start to be connected to that other entity if they're connected.
Great question, though. I think a lot of folks have multiple programs within the same agencies. All right, Joseph, I think we might be ready to go into the
Awesome.
next piece.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead then and describe real quick what you're about all to do. I'm going to have a little shortened amount of time to do it in, but essentially we're going to go ahead and we're going to break up into groups to develop our goals and our brand pillars, and then a brand statement. So yeah, we'll break up into those groups. Then each participant should use the worksheet sent to them in the email, and we can also send it again in chat to start working on those. Each team will have a facilitator that will help guide you through the workshop process. And then individuals, each of you will have 8 minutes to develop keywords or phrases that describe your prep project. You'll be using this worksheet to do that. And then ultimately, you're going to be welcome to discuss, or you'll have the opportunity to discuss these things amongst yourselves. And then, we'll meet up for about 3 minutes or so in the middle to go ahead and talk about it all. And then we'll come back, let everybody go out and create some brand statements for about another 5 minutes or so. And then we'll come back together and talk about what we did and if it was effective, and ways we can, we can help you in the future. So yeah, I guess let's go ahead and do it.
Give me 1 second. I know we say workshop and people scramble to leave. So we're going to go ahead and open the rooms right now. Thanks for those of you who are able to participate.
It's a pretty cool workshop.
All right, the room should be opening. Guidelines in the small workshops, but we appreciate you participating and hope you got a little bit of something out of them, a chance to just start thinking through this. Would anyone like to raise their hand or tell us what words you came up with that you think embody your project and fit your primary audience? Anyone willing to share? You can put it in the chat too if saying it aloud doesn't feel comfortable to you.
And Ralph, if you wanted to finish up what you were saying, it'd be great to hear from you.
From me.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was saying I appreciate it all because I spent 30 years as a journalist, so marketing is all kind of new to me, and I'm blessed that I have a really good team to pick up on all of my shortcomings and watch my back. But I enjoy learning. The word I picked was empower. We do a lot of trying to give teams a voice, and we make that a big part of what we do, and giving them the information and then giving them the power to make the decisions, but the decisions are based on the information that our great team of educators give them. So I love the program, and I picked up so many things today to do better.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. That's a great word. I think other words that Jennifer mentions: leadership, empowerment, safe space. These are awesome. I wanted to go ahead and put the, let's see, yeah, thanks Stephanie for sharing the slides. If you have questions or you would like to talk to Joseph or Stephanie, please feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they would be happy to comment on your brand pillars or your brand identity. If you are filling it out and wanted some feedback, we're happy to provide that kind of support. We would love for you to complete an evaluation about this and tell us if this webinar met your needs or what else you might need as a result. I did want to put in a little plug that we are, you'll be receiving an email about this shortly, but we will be having a share and learn session at the end of this month on March 30th to talk about messaging and branding in more depth. So we'll have an hour-long discussion where we can kind of share what we've done, where we've had a lot of success, where we might need some more support. And so I'd invite you to join us in that. A registration for that will be coming out early next week. And I think that's it. The slides for this will be available on the Exchange along with the recording. And there are a ton of resources that we have kind of at the end, some resources slides. So with that, I will thank you again for participating. I don't know, Joseph or Stephanie, if you all had anything else you wanted to say.
No, just thanks a lot for participating, and I really hope it was helpful to you.
Yep, same. Thank you all so much for attending.
Have a great day.
Thank you.